Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening up some source material that, frankly, presents a radically different timeline than what we usually hear about. We're talking interconnected biomedical technology.
That's right. And this material, it's highly critical. It insists the technology is often framed as, emerging or down the road.
Things like under-the-skin telemetry, biodigital convergence.
Exactly. The argument here is that these aren't futuristic concepts at all. They are, according to this analysis, fully deployed, already out there.
Generating massive revenue, operational for years. It's quite a claim.
It really is. And that's the core challenge this deep dive puts to you, our listener. Our mission is to unpack why this public narrative seems to lag so far behind what the sources describe as corporate and regulatory reality.
The sources argue these systems are established, and we need to look at, well, specific timelines, regulations, not just theories.
Forget the white papers, basically. Look at the deployment facts.
And the framework they use kicks off with a pretty startling assertion.
It does. The idea that military and high-level corporate R&D could be operating maybe 30, even 40 years ahead of what the public knows.
Which means if you hear someone saying, oh, they don't have that technology yet.
According to this analysis, that statement is likely demonstrably false, especially if you, follow the money. Look at market share.
Okay, so market share versus just, say, a patent filing. That's key here.
It's fundamental to their logic. It's rooted in just standard business life cycle thinking. Shift focus away from the patent.
Which could be years old.
Decades, even.
Yeah.
And focus instead on the proof of deployment. Actual market share, money being made.
Right. So let's unpack that framework a bit. The source lays out a sequence, doesn't it?
A very clear order of operations. Standard stuff for tech rollout. Starts with the patent.
Okay.
Then product development, R&D. Then you get the startup phase.
Right. Getting it off the ground.
Then comes deployment, actually putting it out there.
Yeah.
And finally, market share.
And the source's big critique is that the public conversation gets stuck way back at the patent stage.
Constantly gets hung up on patents from years ago, while ignoring, supposedly, the billions in current market share, which proves deployment has already happened.
Because it has market share.
Then the R&D is done. The startup phase is over. Deployment is complete. It's operational.
And this is where the source starts dropping some concrete timelines to back this up.
Exactly. It claims, for instance, full deployment of embeddables, ingestibles, and wearables.
Right.
These things got FCC and FDA backing and have been operational since 2012.
2012. Wow. That's over a decade ago.
Almost 12 years.
Yeah.
Yet, like you said, still discussed in some places like it's science fiction.
It really speaks to that potential gap between corporate rollout and public awareness.
Absolutely. And the analysis points to the groundwork, too.
Yeah.
It mentions 25 years of nano.gov, saying nano isn't new.
It was in textbooks. Assisted living facilities.
Yeah, used in senior homes years ago, apparently, long before it became a hot topic.
Yeah.
And even more specific, the body network itself, the infrastructure,
Yeah.
asserted to have gone commercial, with companies involved back in 1995.
1995. Okay, that really shifts the perspective. These aren't new ideas popping up. They're built on decades of work and regulatory groundwork.
Yes, and the material gives other early proof points, like MCIDs, unique identifiers, apparently being collected off devices linked to visible light communication since 2005.
Okay.
And more recently, remote patient monitoring RPM. That was mandated into doctors' offices with FCCFD back in 2018.
Mandated. So not optional R&D, but the government requiring doctors use the system?
That's the claim. It was about adopting an already deployed system.
Okay, so if the market share and mandates confirm deployment, let's dig into the specific systems the source identifies, beyond just, like, fitness trackers.
Right. The document gets very precise. Remote patient monitoring, RPM, is called the core of the new digital healthcare ecosystem.
Not just a gadget, but a system.
An operational system used by doctors, nurses since 2012, supposedly hooked into big databases and apps.
And that RPM system connects to the Body Area Network, or BAN.
Correct. The BAN is linked specifically to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and tied to the idea of cyber-physical systems since, again, 1995.
Okay.
But maybe the most mind-bending part for you, the listener, according to this analysis, is human-body communication.
Yeah.
HBC.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting, how the communication actually happens. What is HBC, according to the source?
HBC, it says, uses sub-millimeter wave radar.
Okay.
Technology traced back to Purdue University, 1995. and it claims this standard was mandated worldwide years ago.
Mandated worldwide. How does it work, though? Not Wi-Fi.
No, instead of broadcasting signals externally, like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, HBC apparently uses the human body itself,
Your skin and bones.
your skin and bone, as the transmission medium, running computer data through you.
Wow.
Think of it like ultra-low power, very short-range transmission where you are the network cable, essentially. The source suggests this is what allowed early devices, maybe like Fitbits, to work back in the mid-90s.
Okay, if the body is the network, that changes everything about data collection. So this deeply personal, maybe even subdermal data, where does it go? What handles that sheer volume?
That's the next piece of the puzzle. The tech deployment apparently needed a parallel build-out of data infrastructure and, crucially, legal frameworks.
To manage the data and protect the operators.
Exactly. For data curation, the source points to Palantir. Claims their contract for building and managing huge medical databases kicked off way back in 2002.
2002. Palantir involved in curating data from these body networks. Okay. What about the legal side, the shielding?
Two key things are mentioned. First, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency.
Yeah.
The document asserts CISA has the alleged ability to get something called stochastic data from pretty much any company.
Stochastic data. Can you break that down for the listener? What does that mean here?
In simple terms, think of it as aggregated data, metadata, used for modeling, predicting trends, probabilities, behaviors, movements. Not necessarily your specific data point, but patterns derived from many points.
Okay, predictive modeling data.
Right. And the source claims that because CISA can supposedly access this type of data, the company collecting it is shielded from legal liability for that metadata.
So, protection for the company running the network. But what about the individual? The person generating the data? What about consent? You mentioned a claim about the FDA earlier.
Yes, a pretty startling claim. The document asserts the FDA waived the right to consent for certain systems.
Waived consent. Which systems?
Specifically those using closed-loop feedback or AI. This allegedly happened about 2 years ago via the Cures Act.
Wait, the Cures Act? I thought that was mainly about making electronic health records easier to share, interoperability between doctors and patients.
That's how it was framed publicly, yes.
Yeah, how does the source claim that Bill waived consent for these, well, deep monitoring systems? That sounds highly controversial.
It does, and that's a core part of the source's critique. The argument is that the push for standardized electronic records and mandated interoperability, that new digital healthcare ecosystem, created an opening.
A loophole.
Kind of. By integrating these specific devices, the embeddables, the ingestibles, into this mandated interoperable framework, and by classifying their data streams as part of automated, maybe essential monitoring, the source claims that blanket consent for the system's continuous operation was effectively bypassed, at least for certain devices using that closed-loop feedback.
So the push for easier data sharing was allegedly used to mandate the underlying tech, potentially sidestepping individual consent for the continuous monitoring part.
That's the assertion. And adding another layer to this, the source points to exemptions under the ISM bands industrial, scientific, and medical.
Meaning?
Academia, the military, medical fields. They apparently have global exemptions from many standard regulations when using human body communication, which, the source implies, allows deployment to continue without hitting certain roadblocks.
Wow. Okay, this level of claimed legal and corporate setup suggests, if true, this is far beyond just theory. Which brings us to the source's critique of, well, public information. How do they explain the massive gap between this alleged reality and what people generally talk about online or hear in the news?
They don't mince words. The source labels the constant dismissal of things like biodigital convergence as fantasy or fear P as intentional.
Intentional dismissal, why?
They call it information operations, perception operations management, or even MISO military information support operations. The goal, they argue, plausible deniability. Keep the public confused or dismissive while the systems are operational and being monetized.
So, accusing certain figures of actively misleading the public about technology that, according to the source, already exists and works.
Yes, and they offer a specific, quite critical example involving cardiac telemetry.
Okay.
The source names a figure who allegedly worked for a company, Cardio. This company was apparently sued by the Department of Justice over offshoring intracardiac network remote telemetry data related to the VA.
Intracardiac. Inside the heart network telemetry.
Right. Yet the source claims this same figure then publicly downplays or dismisses the very possibility of nanotech or biodigital convergence as if it's, impossible,
or just conspiracy talk.
And the source argues this isn't just misinformed opinion, but financially driven.
That's the claim. Knowingly lying for clickbait engagement or neuro-advertising. Basically, controlling the narrative helps businesses profit from these allegedly hidden systems by keeping public attention elsewhere. Distraction.
That leads to a historical connection the source makes, which puts that 1995 commercialization date in a pretty chilling context.
It's a very pointed observation, yeah. The source notes that several high-profile, often controversial government or military research programs,
Like MKUltra, Operation Stargate.
those kinds of programs,
Yeah.
they're often cited as officially ending around 1995.
Okay.
And the source draws a direct line, asserting that this end date correlates precisely with the claimed commercial deployment of the body area network by corporations in that same year.
Suggesting a handover. From military testing to commercial rollout.
That's the strong implication. A transition.
Okay. So, bringing this all back, what does this mean for you, the listener, today? If this deployment reality is potentially so far ahead of public discussion, how does it impact, your daily life, your choices?
Well, the implications for privacy, autonomy, they're potentially huge. The source brings up the Internet of Behaviors.
I've heard that term.
Cites publications like Forbes talking openly about goals like using neural nudging, even exploring how to advertise to people in their dreams. This isn't just about counting steps. The alleged infrastructure is built around influencing thought and behavior.
And the source contrasts this with what it calls distraction narratives, aliens and religious platitudes, suggesting adults get caught up in those while the next generation is learning something different.
Exactly. It notes that the curriculum is already adapting. College students learning about the Internet of Behaviors as standard stuff, AI and K-12 education rolling out. The suggestion is the youth are getting the operational truth, while older generations might be arguing about diversions.
And who's really in charge here? The source says, don't just look at governments.
Right. It asserts that focusing only on governments misses the main players. The core drivers, they insist, are powerful businesses, global stakeholders. They're the ones allegedly running the show, making the profits from this deployed tech.
So the message is, ignore the noise.
Pretty much. Reject the confusing narratives, follow the market share, understand the business logic, patent development, deployment, market share. That's where the proof lies, according to this analysis.
That is an incredibly deep and honestly unsettling dive into the potential true status of body area networks. It really forces you to question the common timeline and focus purely on evidence of deployment and regulation.
Absolutely. And to leave you with that final provocative thought, building on that idea of human-body communication, using your body as the network.
Skin and bone as the transmission medium.
Yeah. The source suggests you consider the missing anatomy that these deployed systems might be utilizing.
Missing anatomy. We talked about electrical conductivity, but what else? What deeper concepts are they pointing to?
The source encourages looking into more specialized areas, things like medical physiology, but also human biofields, the quantum field, and your morphology.
Biofields, quantum morphology.
It implies that tech isn't just using simple electrical signals in tissue. It suggests something deeper, arguing this sort of unseen anatomical component is what allows these systems to facilitate things like electrocardiograms, electroencephalograms, and even sophisticated closed-loop machine learning, potentially right into your own neurons.
Wow.
It really challenges you to think beyond radio waves and consider the fundamental structure of life itself as potentially being the ultimate network component.